This is 2.1 functions. So now we've figured out ways to represent relations. We figured out how to do domain and range. Now we're going to decide, okay, is this set of relations a function? We got to figure out what a function is first. So let's take a look here. And it says here, a function is a relation in which each element of the domain corresponds to exactly one element of the range. Now, that's the fancy look at it, okay? So as I'm doing this and I'm going through here, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit easier definition of this here, okay? So what you're looking for is, if it's a function, you're going to ask the question, do any x values get used more than once? That's the question we're going to ask. And if the answer is yes to that, then it's not a function. If the answer is no to that question, then it is a function. So what you're looking for is to see if any of the x values are used more than once. Do the x values repeat? So as we look here at these examples down here, it says tell whether each relation is a function or not. So these are mapping diagrams, okay? And what I'm looking for is, are there more than one arrow coming out of a number? So as you see here, -2. There's only one arrow. It goes to -2. That's the only number it goes to. We're okay so far. 1, it has one arrow. It only goes to 0. Okay, so 1 and 0 are tied together. That's it. 1 only goes to 0. And then you look at 2, and you see 2 has 2 arrows. 2 goes to 2, and 2 goes to 3. Well, that can't happen. Okay, 2 can only go to one number. So the input, or the x value, can only go to one number. This guy is not a function. And they're going to ask you to tell me why when they say explain. Okay, so we simply say the x values repeat. And if the x values repeat, that cannot happen. Okay, it's not a function. Okay, let's look at the second example now. Over here, we've got -2, it goes to -1. It's only got one arrow coming from it. -1 only has one arrow coming from it. 3 only has one arrow because 3 goes to 0. And 6 only has one arrow. It goes to 4. So since all of these x values only have one arrow, this is a function. Okay? Because no x values repeat. Okay, no x values repeat. Okay, so let's look at the other examples up here. This time I'm going to give you a set of ordered pairs. Okay, so is the relation given by the ordered pairs a function? Well, I'm looking at the x values. -5, -3, 0, 0, 0. Did I say any x values the same more than once? Well, absolutely I did. I used 0 3 times. Sorry, this is not a function because the x values repeat. Okay, let's look at this example. Again, I'm looking at x values. There's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 3, there's a 4, and there's a 0. All I'm looking at is the x values. Did any of those repeat? Well, no, they're all different. Perfect. This is a function. Again, no x values repeat here. No x values repeat. Okay, so now you're able to figure out, is it a function from a set of ordered pairs? Okay. And now we're going to look at, can you find, is it a function from a graph? Well, in order to see if it's a function from a graph, we do what we call the vertical line test. The vertical line test says you can use a vertical line to determine whether a relation is a function. The vertical line test states that if a vertical line passes through more than one point, more than one point on the graph of the relation, then the relation is not a function. So you see here, this is an example of a curve. Vertical line is a line that goes straight up and down. So if I were to draw a line that goes straight up and down through the graph, you'll notice it hits it once there, it hits it once there. It hits it more than one time. Sorry, you're not a function. Why? Doesn't pass vertical line test. So when you're dealing with graphs, you're always going to use the vertical line test. So for example here, if I were to take and draw a vertical line down through this graph, how many dots did it hit? Only hit one. Here, only hit one. Here, only hit one. Here, only hit one. Here, only hit one. And here, only hit one. If it only hits one every time you draw that vertical line, this is going to be a function. And why? Because it passes the vertical line test. Okay, that's your explain part. Okay, so over here, again, I don't necessarily have to draw all of these lines in here, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw this line right here, the vertical line right here. Wait, how many dots did it hit? Uh-oh, it hit 2. Sorry, you're not a function. At any time, if it hits the graph twice, doesn't matter where it's at, if it hits the graph twice, it is not a function. So here, it was okay, because it only hit it once. But when I drew that first blue line, it hit it twice. Sorry, not a function. And why? It fails the vertical line test. Okay? So now you should be able to go back in ClassKick and complete figuring out, are things functions?